Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're here reacting and having a discussion about a video from Otzdarva called The Huge Gap in DBD's Balance. So if you want to see the original video, it will be linked in the description. And I'm curious to see what the topic is going to include, because there definitely is a huge gap in DBD's balance. I do believe that the argument really leans toward different directions. A lot of people will argue maybe the game is more leaning to survivor. Other players will say maybe it's killer sided and things like that. And the galaxy brain people say that it's swift sided and it's not just one side. You know, it's more so like team sided, like whichever side has the more assistance in that way. So with that being said, I'm curious to see what Odds has to say. You know, he's usually one of the one of the most influential people in the DBD community when it comes to builds and information and things like that. So I'm very curious to see what the topic is about. Let's get right into it.
So I've been playing Dead by Daylight since 2017, and throughout all of these years, I've seen this game go through a lot of things. Game-breaking bugs that made the game unplayable, controversies that split the community, cheaters running rampant and getting away with it, balancing decisions that almost kill the game on the spot. We've seen it all, and I have to say, despite all of these adversities, right now, DBD seems to be getting its act together. They're listening to feedback more than before. They're doing a lot of initiatives to increase the quality of life, and some of the last content generally is getting better on most fronts. So
I agree with Odds with that, honestly. I know you guys, a lot of you guys who maybe watch the channel may disagree to some extent, or are very quick to bag on behavior, you know what I mean? Especially because of their history, and I was one of those people as well. But over time, I started to kind of see where behavior started to, you know, make improvements. Like they were making more of an effort, it seems like, in recent memory, obviously, especially with the announcement of the sort of Operation Health kind of initiative that they're going to do. It sort of opened my mind in that way to accept that maybe behavior is actually starting to move into a direction that we can all be actually happy about, because they're actually trying to make good positive changes for the game. Now obviously they do have a couple of times where they do have some mishaps in here and there, and there are some things that I may disagree with, or that we as a community may disagree with, but ultimately they are trying to make an effort nowadays. We like, you know, I was also, you know, I may not have played as early as Odds has, but I was, you know, I did play the game during some of those insanely difficult metas to go up against, especially when Dead Hard was still an exhaustion perk that you can kind of just recharge, and have all game made for this, and resilience, like being comboed and stuff like that, was also very prominent. And there have been a lot, there has been a lot of game breaking bugs I was even able to witness myself, right? Of course, myriad of hackers and everything like that. It's not a perfect game, but I will say they're starting to at least move into that direction where we can actually say, like, no, there's gonna be some decent changes, and we're starting to see some things. Now obviously, you know, there's still a lot to go, I would say, in terms of balancing. I still think there's a lot for them to be able to do. I do think that there is still more to be done, and that's why I will say, like, especially when we're getting good, like, some very popular licenses like Five Nights at Freddy's and things like that, it makes sense that they want to continue to improve the game and make it actually, you know, possible to have these big names come in.
So, DBD, if you're watching, good job. Keep it up. This is definitely the way to keep going ahead, despite all of the baggage that this game is currently carrying, obviously. But that being said, there seems to be one issue, one problem that no matter what happens just keeps getting worse, or at least doesn't seem to get any better. And that is the gap, the chasm, the huge disparity between the strongest killers in the game, such as Blight or Nurse, and the weakest killers in the game, such as Myers or Trapper. And why this gap exists isn't immediately visible and isn't immediately...
I was hoping he'd mention Ghostface in there because I will not miss an opportunity to dunk on one of my main killers in any opportunity. Or even Skull Merchant is even more of a perfect example of one of the weakest in the game. Like I've said before, the bottom 3 killers in the game have been Trapper, Ghostface, and Skull Merchant respectively, going from strongest to weakest within the lowest tier. Trapper at least has a fighting chance. Ghostface, completely garbage, and obviously Skull Merchant is even worse than that, objectively speaking. But hey, I guess we can include Myers in there too. I wouldn't say he's as bad as those 3 though. I would say he's just a little bit, I think he's at least like a step above them, because he does have a more simple power that can be applied to many things. It is a very discussion when it comes to that, but still. Either way, let's continue.
Immediately obvious. In fact, if you start playing DBD as a beginner, there's really not that much difference between a Nurse and a Trapper. In fact, sometimes the stronger killer will perform worse because they are slightly difficult to play, and newer players are not very good at it. This is something that is obviously reflected in the statistics, where very strong killers sometimes are actually at the bottom of the tier list because people don't know how to play them. Additionally, there's been a lot of buffs to weaker killers. For example, Trapper and Myers have only received buffs, and also Nurse and Blight, killers that are this strong, typically have received nerfs. Even though they were a long time coming, they have overall been nerfed. So if the strongest killers get nerfed and the weakest killers get buffed, how is there still such a gap? And where exactly do you see this gap? Well, you can do a simple experiment like I did some time ago. In this experiment, I played as Trapper, one of the weaker killers, with the best possible build using every advantage.
I do think that the build can be slightly altered, but I do kind of understand the idea. Well, I'd just say the best possible build, right? So if the best possible build is Trapper Bag, the Purple Stone add-on, that makes sense. Corrupt makes sense. Deadlock, yeah, that makes sense. Agitation's an interesting choice, and Noed as well. But maybe he means like the best build for himself. You know, I think the best build for Trapper for many players, I think, may change across the board, you know, but I do think there are some consistencies. Early game slowdown, that makes complete sense. Mid game slowdown, that makes complete sense. And the Purple Stone add-on, that makes sense to me. Trapper Bag, I do think, kind of limits a bit of your flexibility, because, you know, depending on where you obviously place the traps and stuff like that, and with Trapper Bag, you can't pick it back up. So, you know, I do disagree to some extent, but I also don't really play Trapper, so maybe you know, I know Odds, I think, is a Trapper main, if I'm not mistaken, or at least plays a lot of Trappers, so, you know, he probably knows more than I do, so I'm not really gonna dig too deep into these specifics as to why these perks, or why Trapper Bag or anything like that, or Trapper Sack or whatever it's called, you know, whichever one that you can't pick them up, the purple one. But yeah, I mean, you know, and then Noed is a good backup, so especially for Trapper. So I'm like, all right, you know, that's fine. I think, you know, I wouldn't know, you know what I mean? Sound off if you're a Trapper main in the comments. Let me know if you agree with this build. Do you think it's good? Like, how would you change it?
That I could possibly have. And on the other side, my streamer buddy Hans played as Nurse, one of the stronger killers, but with nothing. No perks, no add-ons, completely empty build. I had to fight to the bitter end in many of my matches. I struggle a lot and managed to get a pretty respectable result. But the Nurse...
Oh my god, look at the data. I don't know if you can see the data. I might be blocking the Nurse one, but the Nurse side says 3.7 average kills, 36 seconds first down average, and 2.0 gens done average for the nurse on Hens' side. So it's an alarming change. It's an alarming difference, especially when you see that if 36 seconds was for the first down average on Nurse compared to 72 seconds average on Trapper. Which even then, right? Let's just say, you know, they're playing they say started the match and only focus on downing that one person. And 36 seconds was the average of all of those chases. And 72 seconds is the average for Trapper. That's insane. And it's saying first down as well, so that I'm assuming that doesn't count in the outliers, like you get a clamp early on or whatever have you. So under that assumption, I go, yeah, you know, this does check out. This does make complete sense. This makes complete sense, because average kills is a shock though. But he did say that using Trapper, he had to fight to the bitter end, as he said himself. Had to fight to the bitter end to even keep up with Nurse, that is, which we haven't heard yet, but it most likely is consistently getting those kills, and with no add-ons or perks. So that's insane. Now, could I argue that maybe you could try a different, like slightly different build with Trapper to potentially maybe raise it up just a little bit? Maybe. However, though, this is still odds, right? So he's got more experience with Trapper than myself, so I can't say, hey, like, you know, whatever have you, to the fullest accuracy, because I can only go off of theory and what I've seen with Trapper and just overall knowledge. And personally, I maybe would have swapped out like maybe one perk and maybe change the other add-on for like Bloody Coil, you know what I mean, just for free injuries, or, you know, maybe something else like I don't even know, like maybe the other add-on for like the resetting, which is not as good but still an option, you know, or something like that, I guess. But I don't know if that was if that was maybe not chosen in order to kind of even it out, maybe, because like getting those well, no, he said the best possible build, but I don't know if that would have affected the data at all, because like if you have like those add-ons as well, if it might have skewed the data, because you're able to get more injuries, which means more downs, which means that it might affect the down average or something like that. So I don't know how that was obviously applied, but just going off of what we can assume, you know, the data still speaks for itself, right? Like they're both getting the same amount of kills, but the first down average is insane. We're going from 36 second average to 72 seconds, and the gens done average was higher by like an extra 1.4 compared to 2 from Nurse to Trapper. Or rather Trapper to Nurse, you get the idea. Insane, but to be expected.
Nurse actually got an even better result, and in most of her games she won her matches a lot more decidedly and with a lot more room to spare, and it was also probably far less stressful, and she had to make less risky decisions. That is the real difference between an S tier and a D tier.
Let me also take a look at what the notes are on the screen. So he did put some notes.
And with a lot more.
So it says Nurse indoor maps is natural slowdown, and it says Hen's got several indoor maps in his games. Strong chase equals pressure multiple survivors. Strong chase, you can tunnel anyone. Makes sense. With no perks or add-ons.
More room to spare, and it was also probably far less stressful, and she had to make less.
So Trapper, basement equals almost inescapable. Stall perks, more time to execute plan. Endgame perks is comeback potential. So I guess that's why he was running agitation, so that he can try to reach the basement sooner. That also would make sense too. And I like I've said, I'm not too keen on the Trapper like bag or sack or whatever add-on that is. Personally, I just think it would be better to be able to pick them up so that you can kind of shift your plan if things kind of go a bit haywire. But either way,
less risky decisions. That is the real difference between an S tier and a D tier, something that is also very, very visible in tournaments. In tournaments, very strong killers like Blight would often win almost every single match if they weren't restricted and some perks and add-ons weren't banned. And on the flip side, some of the weaker killers are so unbelievably weak that they need to be played on very specific maps, and survivors need to be limited quite a lot by the rule set, otherwise they would almost never even get a single kill.
To add on to what Odds is saying, perfect examples are Ghostface, which is very, played in comp, Pig, played in comp, are the same thing. They have to be sent to very specific maps. Ghostface only goes to Larry's, which I argue is still one of his weakest maps, at least for me personally. People make it work, obviously, but I just think it's very weak. And Pig is, I think Pig, who, if ever played in comp, has only gone to Midwich. I don't think they ever go to any other map. So that kind of goes to show, like even in the comp scene, the killer difference is insane. There's a massive gap between the lowest tier to the highest tier, and that's usually how it goes with a lot of games that do have different characters to choose from. You will kind of get those sort of very strong and very weak, and then you kind of have those that kind of fit in between, and that's just kind of how that works. And it can be a bit of an issue because if you do like that character for whatever reason, especially even if you're like a Ghostface fan, Pig fan, you know what I mean, or whatever have you, and you come into the game, Myers, etc., like you basically end up kind of going into the game, and then you'll most likely struggle heavily if you do stay consistent with the game, and overall it ends up leading to like a less fun overall experience if you decide to be very dedicated to the game. So I can kind of see where the issues kind of lie with that.
So how is it that this problem isn't getting better? Well, my point in this video is that even though the developers have tried to directly offset this gap, they've also indirectly kept widening it and making it bigger in certain areas. And today we're going to run through some bullet points and talk about them. Let's talk first about the least important ones, and we're going to get into increasingly bigger and bigger issues. The first and most natural issue is the normal skill expression of survivors. Dead by Daylight has a matchmaking system that tries to pair you with people of equal skill, and over time, over the years, people overall just get better. Many of the structures in this game remain the same. Things like main buildings and especially things like shack or jungle gyms are all basically the same. And over time, people just get better at running these structures.
I completely agree with Odds here. I try to mention this on stream here and there, because I understand that when new people kind of come to the game, or when people kind of come to the stream and they, I've heard it all when it comes down to like skill level MMRs, hours played, stuff like that, and there's a massive gap, and it's very hard to even be able to pinpoint where your skill level could be at the game, because this game is a game where you can have the highest amount of hours on one game is low amount of hours on this game. So something like 1,000 hours, is a low end when it comes to DBD. You're considered like, beginner when you have 1,000 hours. And if you have at least 10k hours, you're considered at least an expert, right? It's insane. And because of that issue, it's hard for people to be able to pinpoint that. So, you may get some people that have an ego, and then they'll say that they're like, they're the best player in the game because they win all their games, but then they don't realize that they're actually playing against maybe more average or low level players. Or you'll hear those arguments that say, oh, I don't have to camp or tunnel in my games, I always win in my games when I play killer, but notice that they only play killer every once in a while, maybe once a week, whatever have you. And it's like, yeah, but you're it's because of this. It's because of this. Like, like experience is seen through the MMR system, right? Like, if you're going against smart players, they're going to play these tiles extremely well. And the best indicator to know if you're going against strong players and if you are increasing your MMR is if people are making less and less and less mistakes. if they're playing very efficiently, extremely well, you know that you're most likely going against very strong players. And as Otz is saying himself, they're going to be able to play these tiles very efficiently. Like and you can tell. It's easy to tell. And because of that, and then because of obviously the fact that there is a consistency when it comes down to hours played alongside with things not really like changing too much, you can basically just keep on and continuing it and making it more and more and more efficient, to the point that when you start going against the most experienced players, it's pretty much impossible to win against it unless you're using the top strongest killers in the game. Pig and is a perfect example in this clip, which is going to struggle because they don't have like any way to catch up and chase necessarily. They do have an option somewhat when it comes down to the ambush, but obviously, albeit an option, is not the best option. And that is the biggest thing when it comes down to this game and its balancing and things like that. One of the most insanely I think it might be one of the most least discussed things, I think, is what Otz is saying here, that player skill really does, like, you know, make a difference. And arguably it gets less fun the more experience that the players you go up against, honestly. And unfortunately I mean, you know, I mainly just play on stream and stuff, like play the game on stream and things like that. And you can notice just from when I'm playing, you know, my mains and stuff like that on there, that they're good players. Like, it's really not a lot you can do, especially with a very low tier killer like Ghostface and stuff like that. It's just simply impossible to win in a lot of games, and that's kind of why. Like, they're very experienced, so a killer with nothing, like for chase, you're pretty much cooked. There's nothing you can really do.
And one common thing that is present among the lower tier killers is that almost all of them play the exact same way. Most of the low tier killers are M1 type killers that move at the same speed, attack in the same way. Their power doesn't really give them any crazy mobility or distance or range. They all have to catch up to you slowly. And these killers are particularly easier to counter in structures that survivors are good at.
I'm glad that Otz has said it himself. If I haven't said it enough on stream or in videos, Otz himself, if people need to hear Otz say it, there you go. Otz said it himself. It's like, and even more so, it says, and the note here, characters with normal 115 movement speed that mostly rely on basic attacks to get downs, M2 rely heavily on their power to get downs, mouse 2. So I'm glad that Otz said it. I'm glad that we have Otz himself literally saying it as well, if it wasn't obvious enough. M1 killers play all this very similar, so it's very easy to counter them, and of course when the experience level starts to increase with your opponents and stuff like that, it just gets harder and harder and harder to win games, and harder and harder and harder to get downs and stuff like that. And it's going to obviously, you know, shift these killers right down the tier list because they don't have any way to keep up at a certain point. So, like, you know, it's only so much you can do. You know, you can try to get better with the mind games and things like that, but a lot of the time there's also, which I don't know if he's gonna mention this part too, but like map design also kind of plays a part in that. Because M1's already very slow, and then the maps do not really favor them as well. And then we can see that in the comp scene too. Like, why do you think that we have Pig only in Midwich? Right? Like, you need a small map for Pig. And you need, like, specifically, like, an indoor map for Ghostface, for example. Like, they only can be on these very specific maps because of their weaknesses.
Now, this is something that is probably slowly gonna get better. Some of the newer maps have unique structures that survivors are not so good at running yet. And even though they currently use a lot of map offerings to go back to maps that are familiar, map offerings are getting nerfed in the future. They will be less effective. This means that in a few months from now, we will have more different maps that are less predictable for survivors. And I guess the survivors will have less control over exactly where they take you. This should give a better chance to load your killers.
That is good to hear that Odds himself is saying that the map offerings are going to be changed. I was considering actually making a video talking about map offerings and how they could be changed, because I heard that he just said that they were going to be nerfed. I may have to drop a video talking about that topic and kind of see, you know, how we can sort of improve map offerings to be a little bit more enjoyable and less annoying and irritating to go up against. So I'm curious to see what that would look like and what the nerf would look like. And he also mentioned the unpredictable tiles, which is very true. We do see that with the new Eerie Crows variation. I do think it's a smidgen better for the M1s in general. The only issue I have with the map is obviously the fact that like it's very open, so like stealth killers like Ghostface are gonna struggle. Because he already struggled on Eerie as it was, but like even more so because he doesn't have any way to kind of hide to be not get revealed, which is its own discussion.
So this is one of those things that I think will probably get better over time. Now, another issue that does affect low tier killers definitely a bit more are chase perks. And I mean all of the chase perks. We're talking about things that give auto reading on the killer. We're talking about things that make you faster when you vault. We're talking about exhaustion perks. We're talking about everything.
He's 100% right about this, honestly. Dramaturgy and resilience are like two perks, and even finesse are like incredibly broken against M1s. Like you literally have zero opportunities as an M1 to get a hit after that because you just simply aren't fast enough. It simply doesn't have much for it. Dramaturgy especially is like old Dead Hard. Like we're talking OG Dead Hard that used to just give you distance when you pressed it. That's literally Dramaturgy 2.0, and it's disgusting. Like it is disgusting against M1s, and it's unfortunate. I really wish that it wasn't like that. I really like there's so many things that I would want to change, and I got a heart back to Ghostface again. Like I would have completely just reworked his power entirely to be something completely different. And I mentioned in the previous video that I would have much preferred like a Scream licensed, you know what I mean, killer instead. Perfect scenario. With Scream license, we get basically Ghostface MK1 version type of style, where he runs towards you, grabs and stabs. To me, that would have been cool. I'm like, alright, that would have been insane, you know. But that's fine, whatever. Point is, he's completely right, and exhaustions too. Exhaustions are incredibly difficult to go up against too. Maybe not with like Nurse or Blight or stuff like that, but it's M1s especially are suffer heavily against because they're already slow, right? So like you finally make it up there and then they boost off with another speed boost and you're like, well, all right, I guess, you know. So, you know, like what can you do in those scenarios, you know? Because the perks that and like the ways to apply exhaustion to even counter those things are not effective, or they're very situational, and that's unfortunate, right? And maybe and that's the thing too. Like I was considering actually running the victims detailed routine on Ghostface recently, but the problem is it's like, how do we take off drop leg? You know what I mean? Like you kind of, or like cooldown, right? Like it feels like you're kind of stuck in that situation where you just kind of don't have options. Or hey, I want to run Fearmonger, but you know they tend to let go of the gen before I even get there, so they can get rid of the exhaustion so that they can start running off again. Or the map shows where I'm coming from, so they get off anyway, and then the exhaustion doesn't matter. Like it's tough. Oh, and then don't forget, Vigil exists, so they'll just have that equipped, and they buffed it. They buffed it recently, so then that exhaustion you applied most likely doesn't matter. So, you know, yay, I guess. It sucks, man. Because I specifically main a lot like M1 killers. I don't tend to play too many M2s. I main Pyramid Head and I main Chucky to P100. And even Chucky. Chucky is a special case. I can have a whole discussion about him too. He's very unique in his way, even though has an M2. He's unique in the sense that he suffers from some and thrives in others when it comes down to certain perks. So that's interesting to see.
We have had recently some new perks added to the game. Finesse allows you to vault faster. Obviously, we still have keys and a lot of new auto-reading perks that allow you to see killers through walls. We even have a collection now of perks that only trigger when you stun the killer, such as Exultation and Smash It. And almost all of these perks are easier to use on low-tier killers. Some of them, in fact, are useless against high-tier killers because high-tier killers almost never get stunned. They have bigger mobility options, so they catch up to exhaustion. So all of these perks, they are fun, they are engaging. I don't think they are a bad thing for the game, but many of the high tier killers just eat them. They don't care about them. And because low tier killers have to play in predictable ways, they do have to deal with perks like this a little bit more often. Another shift that has occurred when it comes to perks is to slowdown. It used to be that most of the popular and powerful slowdown perks for killers to make the generators a bit slower were passive. We had things like Corrupt Intervention, we had things like Ruin, and even things like Surge, which only trigger from basic attacks. Most S tier killers down you with their special attacks, so Surge has never been really popular in them. So when these perks were the best slowdown that was available, this was a more equitable ground for S tier and low tier killers.
The thing is that I do remember hearing about old Ruin was really strong. They had Forever Freddy back in the day. Like the Corrupt used to never deactivate when you got downs and stuff like that. And then they promptly got nerfed because, of course. And because of those nerfs, and even nowadays, because of those nerfs, the weaker killers tend to struggle even harder than they probably would. And that's the point that Otz is making, is the fact that the slowdown that we've had got nerfed into the ground, arguably. Like some, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of the perks, the slowdown got nerfed. And it hurts a lot of the low tiers. It hurts a lot of the low tiers. So then, and then what ends up happening, and this is why you will hear a lot of the survivor complaints, which it's a nasty cycle when it comes down to survivor complaints, because you get the situation of, oh, I'm going against the slowdown, so it got nerfed, right? Like, because we're using it a lot to slow the game down. And then people are like, well, I can't play my low tiers anymore. So now I gotta switch to the higher tiers. And then they complain that they're going against the higher tiers, but it's like, you already complained that you're already going against the slowdown, and then the weaker killers just can't stand a chance, so they're not gonna be played. Then the slowdown gets nerfed again, and then people pick the higher tiers even more because the lower tiers have even less of a shot. It ends up in a bad cycle. And we've even seen it now, that people still complain about, oh, I'm going against the same slowdown perks. And it's like, yeah, because the gens just get faster and faster. The killers are just way too, like the slow killers, the M1s are just too weak to keep up. It's just not, they're not fast enough. And it's just simply not possible to keep up, and especially when you're going against dedicated teams like that are dedicated to just specifically doing the gens as fast as humanly possible. So, it's unfortunate that that's the case. Especially as somebody who tries to main Ghostface, like sheesh, and plays a lot of M1s. I see all the issues that Otz is talking about. I see literally in every match. Like, it's the same issues. You're going against speed boosts and perks, second chances. Like, every single perk that they have is massively impactful to a weaker killer than it is to an S tier. What I don't understand is why the buffs always go to the survivors, like, perks that are so impactful. It's like, it's insane, Because I figured the perks were fine as they were because they already created such an impact against the low tiers. So from my perspective, I didn't really see the difference or why those perks would need buffs. Like we had Vigil got buffed for whatever reason. We had Resurgence get buffed, which they gave them 70% healing progression off of Hook and stuff like that. And it's insane. It's like what the heck are you supposed to do? You know, it's a lot of stuff that goes into play that affects a lot of the weaker killers, and it's like, damn, like what are you supposed to do? You know, it's so weird. I don't understand like what the best course of action is. I guess just don't win. I guess just lose every single game or something. I don't know, because it's just not fun. So I don't know.
Now we have migrated to a more active slowdown types of perks. The best slowdown perks at the moment often come as a result of you getting a down or you getting a hook. And while this is not a problem per se, I do think it's probably even better.
I think that's the biggest issue as well. Before Odd says anything, I think this is probably one of the biggest issues we have nowadays. Because the shift from passive slowdown to active slowdown means that killers that are weak are not going to stand a chance. Because passive slowdown allows for killers like Clown, Ghostface, Freddy, arguably. I don't know if he's like... I think he might be like B tier right now, but I don't know. Pig... Onryo. I mean, you can really name like any M1. Passive slowdown would do wonders for them if they weren't so bad. But active slowdown only really benefits the high tiers, right? So because high tiers move fast, right? So pop will automatically just give you a higher chance of getting value compared to a lower tier. Painterez, same thing. You need to get a hook to get that to activate. Dead Man Switch, you need a hook to get that to activate. So the active slowdown means you need to get downs. Low tiers struggle to get downs, therefore they can't get slowdown, therefore they can't slow the... Obviously it's straightforward, they can't slow the game down, so they struggle. High tiers can slow the game down because they can literally down people faster. So we're in that situation where like the best perks in the game, some of the strongest slowdowns, are even more effective on the high tiers, because who's playing low tier in this type of environment, right? Like who's gonna have fun playing low tier garbage killers when you can use an S tier and actually have fun, and then also use slowdown to keep you in the game longer to have more freaking fun? It's literally, it makes complete freaking sense. And then the survivors will obviously complain, but it's like, this is sort of the situation they put themselves in. Because they complained that the slowdown was one way. They complained once again that the slowdown was another way. The gens get faster and faster. People have to keep running more slowdown as the time goes up. And you just go, and then you just start putting on high tiers, because why would you play low tier? You know, you have literally zero incentive. You're just asking for a tough game for no reason. Like, if you want to be stressed out, play a low tier. Like why would anyone want to do that? They played a game to have fun. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that go into play with this.
It is undeniable that high tier killers, they get more downs per minute, they get the first down much quicker, and these perks are much better at them. Low tier killers like Myers, like Trapper, they often start out slow, and yeah, maybe later they will snowball into action, but they start out slow. And that means that these perks are just not so good on them, and oftentimes will be wasted. Meanwhile, some killers like Nurse, they start fast and they keep going fast, and they snowball into more damage, into more downs, into more slowdown. You can very easily run 4 slowdowns on some of these killers and get value from all of them, making it really difficult. So, is this a problem? How can we correct it? I think better perk design would be amazing. Right now, there are some of these perks that punish survivors for doing things that really shouldn't be punished, like staying on a gen, screaming, and having the gen block. These things should probably be looked at, because the S tier killers definitely make better use of them. But still, this isn't the biggest issue. I do think a much bigger issue right now is the hook timer. at some point, survivors could be on the hook for 60 seconds and then they would die or go to the next stage. But in order to combat camping, which is admittedly not very fun, the developers made a base kit increase to 70 seconds.
I have to argue that is literally one of the biggest changes that they've gotten. That extra 10 seconds has literally, oh man, the amount of kills that I was going to have, or at least second states that I was going to have, were literally just robbed because of the fact that those 10 extra seconds would prevent them from getting the second state, therefore preventing me from killing somebody, therefore completely reducing the amount of kills I walk out with, which already, when you're playing low tier killers, you struggle to get anyway. So it makes it even more difficult to play Ghostface, Trapper, Myers, you know, whatever killer you could think of that's in the low tier. Skull Merchant if you play them. It gets even harder. And then top of that, let's remember, reassurance exists. So they have the extra base kit 10 seconds, and then they have reassurance to add, like, I think 30 more or whatever amount that you get. So it gets even harder and harder for the lower tiers to even stand a freaking chance. Because sometimes that extra little hook that you can get them to, that extra hook state will just help you in that match, and you just can't get it because that extra 10-second base kit. I already remembered like 5 different matches that have happened, and I'm like, wow, like it's golly, it's like it's very demoralizing, I would say. Like it's very deflating. It's a bit sad. It's like, damn, like, you know, like you could have had that win, you could have had a fighting chance, but you just don't. Like, you just can't do anything about that. Like, it's just because that's the base kit and you're playing a low tier. And then once again, because somebody will have that match, back to the high tiers, back to Nurse, back to Blight, and then they complain, oh, we're only playing against Nurse, Blight, and Kenneki. Like, why are we always doing this? I mean, the writing's on the wall. You know, the writing's on the wall, like I've said many times. And it's just insane.
Survivors can be on the hook for 70 seconds. There are also 2 perks, one of which is very easy to use, which can extend this to 100 seconds as well. So a single survivor could be on the hook for 100 seconds at a time, no problem. Now, this for high tier killers is almost never an issue. High tier killers do not need to camp and often do not want to camp. They will often get a hook, harass generators or injure other people or down other people, and they don't have a problem committing to anyone. S tier killers, almost by definition, can chase you anywhere. They don't shy away from chasing you in a main building. They don't shy away from chasing you in a place with a lot of pallets. Sometimes some of them just straight up ignore pallets. Nurse. So it's not a big deal for them if someone stays on the hook a long time. Obviously, it's not good, but it's not too bad either. Now, compare that to...
I'm glad that Odds has said it. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that maybe if I say it, you know, people just think I'm just complaining or whatever have you. There's a lot of people that may disagree, and maybe I'm just one person. But if Odds himself is saying this, one of the most influential, popular, well-known names in the community is saying it, then it's got to mean something. You know what I mean? It's got to mean something. If literally one of the most well-known people are saying the same thing I'm saying, I didn't even watch the video before. I have never seen this video till right now as I recorded this. And if I'm noticing it, I can't be crazy. Like I can't be crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and if you're noticing this as well, you know, at least we all know collectively that, like, that we're not losing our minds. This has to be real. You know what I mean? This actually has to be problems. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion, you know what I mean? And I'm glad that we're all able to at least look at this and be able to see reality. You know what I mean? If anybody really denying this just don't listen to those people, man. I don't think they're understanding the game properly. And I think they need to actually pay attention more, you know?
lower tier killers. Lower tier killers in general are slower. Some of them need to set up and are more area control heavy, such as Trapper. So if they hook a survivor, they don't have the ability to very quickly go and check around the map because they often don't have any mobility. And if they go around the map and they find one survivor, they have to kind of commit. It used to be that with 60-second timers, it honestly was a little bit difficult for survivors sometimes to guarantee an unhook. You might remember that back in the day, if you were healthy, a killer could grab you out of an unhook. And there was no such thing as anti-camp or anything like that. So a killer could very reasonably injure a few people, hook someone, defend generators in the area, and then defend the hook for a little bit. And that would force survivors to heal and make some kind of altruistic play. Worst case scenario, if a survivor went there unprepared, they could even be grabbed. Now, I'm very glad that the healthy grabs out of hooks were removed. That was absolutely a good thing. But it also has made it very easy for survivors to wait it out. A survivor can wait 60 seconds, come in by themselves healthy, and then unhook. Nothing you can do about it as most low tier killers, which is not a problem. Obviously, we don't want killers to camp. But the problem is that if you cannot camp, then you have to commit. And if you have to commit, that means that you have to chase probably the first survivor that you see. If you don't chase the first survivor that you see, there's a good chance the unhook happens and you get nothing and you've wasted a minute of your time.
Thank you, Otz. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad he freaking said it. Like, goddamn. Wow, he said it perfectly. I couldn't have said it anywhere else. The biggest issue is that if you don't even commit to that chase, you still lose the game. It's like you don't commit to the chase, you lose. You commit to the chase and it takes too long, you lose. Like, what are you supposed to do, you know? Like, where's the fun in that, you know? It's so stressful. Like, what are you supposed to do? And I'm thinking, like, right when he says that, I'm thinking about Ghostface, and I go, yep, pretty much. Like, like, what are you supposed to do as especially like Ghostface, especially, right? Because, like, with Ghostface as a perfect example of that, where it, like, you can't travel across the map quick enough to be able to stop anybody from doing a gen or whatever have you, so you kind of have to stay close. And if you start trying to chase somebody else, and if there's a bunch of pallets around, well, you're not getting your down because you're just not, right? It's gonna take too long. You either you mark them and then they can pre-drop like 3 or 4 pallets. You can't catch up. You break them all, then you lose the chase, and then you have to go back, and then you'll just lose the game entirely. Or you have the other situation where, like he said, they, yeah, like there's, yeah, I don't even know how to explain it without basically just repeating everything I've been saying. Like, it's you're in a lose-lose situation, right? Because if you try to travel and you have to find a survivor, you can't down him quick enough. Guess what? All of that was for nothing. You got one single hook and you just lost 2 gens. You're like, well, great. Like, what am I supposed to do? You say you don't do that and say you stay close, well, you still lose 2 gens and you still get nothing because they can fly in at the last freaking second and still confirm the unhook without getting to second state because of those extra 10 seconds. As a low tier, you're in a lose-lose. Like, you literally have no way of doing anything in response. Like, there's literally nothing you can do. It's insane. It's literally insane. Like, there's... it sucks, you know? Because if you were to... And I don't know if it's because, like, people don't, like, see that on screen to understand or something like that. But for those of us that are experienced, like, we've gone through those situations numerous times where it's just that's how it goes. So I don't know if people need, like, specific video evidence of this. Like, I don't understand, but, you know, but either way. The point still stands, obviously, that the M1s are just going to struggle until they get some adequate buffs to raise up their mobility, raise up their lethality and stuff like that, because ultimately, like, there's nothing they could do. And Oz described it perfectly. You're in that situation where you're in a lose-lose, quite literally. Like, if you commit to that chase and you just can't get your down, you still walk away with nothing. If you try to not do that, or you try to leave the area, you still end up with nothing. and as I've explained, because you're just gonna, they have so much time to unhook that they can literally just finish off the gens and then go save with like 2 people with full health, and you're gonna be able to land 1 M1 on somebody while the rest of the other one unhooks. Like it's right before they reset and state. Like it's just not gonna happen.
And therein lies the problem. A killer that is low tier cannot commit to chases very easily. If you hook a survivor and you go for someone else and they're in a really good area with lots of pallets, maybe a main building, maybe an area with very few hooks, or an area where you know you're susceptible to sabotage, it is really difficult to go back to the hook and exert any kind of pressure because the 70-second default timer is brutal. During that time, the survivors can pop so many gens and do so much progress that you genuinely need to hook and immediately put pressure on someone else. And doing that as an S tier killer is very easy. Doing that as a lower tier killer is very hard. That is the entire point.
Thank you. Thank you, Otz. Thank you. Thank you, Otz. Golly. If Otz is saying it too, at least we know that somebody with like an insane amount of hours, been playing since the game, like since however long he said. I'm assuming since the game dropped. He's been playing since then, and he's saying this, then I mean, I don't know what more you need, you know? Like there's people that have hours upon hours of experience with this game, have intimate knowledge of this game. A fog whisperer is literally saying themselves. I don't know what else you need, you know? I don't know what else you need. Like I'm seeing it, it's all over my streams. Like you can see it yourself. Like it's impossible to win with these characters, man. That's why you never see a Ghostface win streak. That's why you never see a Legion win streak, a Pig win streak, a freaking Myers win streak. Like you don't see these things, like because they're not strong enough.
And one of the reasons why this is so difficult, and one of the reasons that is completely linked to this, is just how absurdly strong survivors are upon the moment of unhooking. Now, most of these changes that came to the game were they came from a good place. They had some good reasoning, right? But they actually backfire in some ways. When survivors become unhooked, they have so much power. First of all, there are now 2 perks that allow survivors to unhook themselves. If you ever stay close to a hook, sometimes even if you're not planning on camping, a survivor can unhook themselves. Sometimes, let's say you hook a survivor between your 3 gen, you could reasonably give the survivor anti-camp depending on where you are. And if not, you will have to concede that you have to stay away. They could, you know, then get the unhook for free. So when survivors unhook themselves, it's obviously really strong. They now have perks like Resurgence, which allow them to heal in possibly 2 seconds by themselves, which is super crazy, especially when lower tier killers have to work a lot harder. And there's also the whole anti-tunnel set of perks, the strongest ones being Off the Record and Decisive Strike. Decisive Strike against a Nurse or a Blight is not that big of a deal. They'll catch up to you really quickly. Decisive Strike against a lower tier killer is huge because it does give you quite a bit of critical distance. And perks like Off the Record are so generous with the amount of endurance that they give you that this will happen to you. People will come and body block for you, but we'll talk about that.
Yep. I said it. I that's literally what I've been saying for ages. One big thing I'm gonna use as an example for those of you who play Chucky, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about here. But when you're using Chucky and you are going against endurances like Dead Hard, Off the Record, Siptic, like anything that can give them endurance, you're cooked. And you understand this, right? Because let me just try to explain it for those of you who may not play Chucky. But basically, take into account that you are a 110 killer and you decide, okay, I'm gonna unleash my slice and dice and try to get this down. They're injured, whatever have you. And then they decide, because mind you can't cancel mid-attack. You're the second you activate that thing, you can only move around. And if you miss, you commit, right? Because you literally jump into the air, fly into whatever direction, and then you have to get up and then start walking, and then you can start attacking. Or say you do land the attack, but oh, guess what? They had endurance. So then you have to do the full recovery of you landing the attack, right? He does his laugh or whatever. he'll literally dash, run up, stab, and then have to stop, and then start to like kind of like, you know, get up and then ready himself again. But they already had the endurance. So because of them taking that free hit, now they just got themselves free distance on a killer that already moves slow, on a killer that already goes on cooldown now. So he's 110 and can't catch up anymore because of that endurance. Because he's 110, they already got free distance from that health state. He has literally no chance of catching up. And that's just how it is, right? That's just how it is. And as we saw with this clip here with Skull Merchant, as you like I've said it many times with the M1 killers and stuff like that. Overall, it's just insane to see, right? That how strong endurances could be, especially even off of Unhook as well. Like I mentioned earlier, Resurgence, 70%. Like I don't understand like where these buffs came from. Like why did they feel the need that these to buff the perks? Like I don't understand. And it only affects the M1s more and more and more, and then it gets harder and harder and harder to play them. So it's just how it is, you know. And I'm glad that that Odds is bringing some awareness to it, because finally we can actually, you know, have like somebody with a big name that can actually explain it to everyone else. Because obviously, you know, there's only so much I can do, right? So, but at least if somebody else can explain it, you know, like that has a much bigger audience, can at least break it down. Because I don't know what else to say to that, you know?
Basically, there are a lot of perks and mechanics introduced to help survivors avoid being tunneled, which I think is awesome, but almost all of them hit the lower tier killers a lot more than they do otherwise. We haven't even talked about Shoulder the Burden. Shoulder the Burden is obviously an extra punishment if you are even thinking of tunneling or even thinking of tunneling in the late game, basically punishing you for not being able to get enough hooks, which as a low tier killer is a little bit harder. Now, possibly the most underexplored aspect of this whole thing is high-level altruism play. This is the thing that I think really sets the low-tier killers and the high-tier killers apart. It's something that is super obvious when you play tournaments, when you play against a Swift that is like unbelievably good. And also something that virtually never ever happens at lower levels. At lower levels, survivors are not mechanically or teamwork wise coordinated enough to pull anything off that's super impressive. But as you play against better and better survivors, you will see that they will come and body block more often. That is when someone comes and takes a hit. That they come and sabotage more often. Keep in mind, sabotage as a mechanic is often banned or at least heavily limited in tournaments, because in some situations survivors can abuse it so much it's actually really game breaking. And other forms of high level altruism, such as dropping pallets and, you know, dying under a pallet so that when you get picked up, a teammate picks you up. Now, thankfully,
thank you, Otz. Again, thank you, Otz. My god. Because I don't know how else to explain this stuff, right? Like it's stuff I've seen, stuff I've experienced, stuff I've gone up against in my time playing my mains and my characters and stuff like that. I've seen it everywhere. Like, this is what I've always go up against, because those are the teams I get. Those are the teams that are in teams coordinated, they're experienced, and then they use the tools that are available to them to be able to get insane advantages, insane levels of altruism that I don't need. Like, how do you even counter some of this stuff, right? Especially as an M1 killer, right? The answer is there really is none. You're just kind of cooked. I mean, you know, good luck. That's pretty much all you got. It's like, what else are you supposed to do? I don't know. Like, if a team is dedicated, they're just walking out with a 3 or 4 out. Like, it's pretty much wraps. You would have to play perfectly, you can't make any mistakes, and you're gonna have to know what you're up against off the bat to understand how to counter it. And if you just don't, then you're just cooked. So, you know, oh well. Like, it's like, what can you do? But that's the experience, you know? And I'm like, wow, like, sheesh. Even recently, I gone against a bully squad as well. Like, I had zero opportunity. Anytime I tried any strategy, it was automatically countered. Like, I tried to stay around Hook to try to maybe get them to be altruistic. No, they popped both gens. It's like, okay, well, let me try tunneling them. Oh, DS. And I'm like, okay, let me try picking up. They're already ready to blind, so I can't even pick up. So I'm like, oh, okay. every avenue was blocked off with something. So it was just like nothing I could do. Right? And I'm playing Ghostface. Right? Like, I have to mark, oh, somebody's following me and revealing me. I'm like, oh, okay, so I have no power. I'm like, cool. Thanks. It's like, you know, he describes it perfectly. I'm glad that we have an example for it, because that's just how it is, and I'm glad that we were able to see it. I mean, there's numerous ways, even like back when For the People Buckle Up was a thing, that was insane. Like, they would have endurance on both people, so no matter who you hit, you couldn't down anybody, you know? And it was like, you just couldn't do anything. It was uncounterable. And, yeah, like, just glad he was able to explain it.
Some perks like background player have been nerfed that make this really, really powerful, but we are also getting new perks such as
Yeah. I've been playing even. Yeah, I've gone against background player. But I've gone against background player. Flashbang. I've gone up against which flashbangs, mind you, were also uncounterable because you could face the wall and still get blinded. I've said this numerous times when I talked about blinds and anything that has to do with blind effects and stuff like that. You literally you couldn't have countered it, because it would go through they would literally background player into your character model and drop it on you. So it's like, what the heck are you supposed to do, right? And background player flashlights, insane. Like, you would have to bring Lightborn, right? Because no matter where you faced, or if you're just out in the middle of the open, which a lot of maps are very open, you're getting blinded. Like, what are you gonna do? You know? It's insane. And now we have a new... Oh my god.
Duty of Care, which also allows high-level altruism. Now, there is a common trend to almost all of these things that I'm talking about. Almost all of these things work very, very well on low-level killers. Low-level killers, such as Trapper, such as Doctor even, Clown, any killer that has normal M1 type chase power, you can very easily body block for them. And this is something that in tournaments can be abused, and, you know, there's just like so many examples. It would be really easy for me to point out a few, but basically teammates can body block very, very easily against the lower tier killers, and it works really, really well, and it's very crippling for killers. The whole pallet, dying under pallet and saving someone, that part of the game is actually really, really broken at high level. There are some maps where the entire strategy of survivors in tournaments is to die under a pallet and have someone wait nearby with balanced landing, and the killer can do literally nothing. There's nothing you can do in some of these situations. But here's the thing, none of these strategies work against high-level killers. High-level killers, for the most part, can absolutely play around this. A high-level killer can leave a survivor on the ground and go for someone else and get an injury or a down very, very quickly. A high-level killer with mobility, which most of them do have, can easily catch up to you and chase you down if you have a flashlight and you're going for a flashy save. Many killers that insta-down that are high-level, like Billy, body blocking against them is very, very dangerous, or sometimes downright impossible. Some of them are so fast or can go right through you, so body blocking becomes literally impossible. So the extent at which these strategies completely fail against high-level characters is mind-boggling. It is crazy how one pallet save can be completely game-breaking for Trapper and a complete nothing burger for Nurse. Sometimes it can even backfire.
Thank you. I couldn't explain it better myself. Literally, I can't. The difference between a character like Ghostface, Skull Merchant, Trapper, with to Blight, Nurse, even Kenneki, if you want to go that far, is insane. Like, two completely different gameplay experiences. the amount of plays that they can pull off on an M1 just because they're an M1 is insane. Like astronomical amounts. Like it's insane. And I can see why, like, why people play mainly the high tiers. Because why would you want to go up against every single strong thing in the game and have no answer for it? It's incredible, right? It's really like insane and incredible that. And I find it even more like ridiculous because of the fact that like some of the most like beloved licenses in the game are also some of the weakest killers in the game too. People love the Saw franchise and they're weak as hell, right? The Ring, another one, like, you know, or Ringu, weak killer. Pig, you know, right? The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, he was weak for a long time. I would say the Scream franchise, but it's not a Scream license, it's a Mask license, so. But, you know, supposedly representing our, you know, Scream license, blah, blah, blah. Still weak as hell. Halloween license, weak as hell. Like, what is that? Like, some of the most beloved licenses, and it's like, nah, they're just garbage. Like, why? Like, why is it like this? I don't understand.
Against high tier characters, because many survivors are on the field instead of just doing gens, which against these killers, sometimes they just have to sit on gens and accept that you will die. So that is a problem. Now, how does this get fixed? I have no idea. I do think that maybe in the future, there should be some kind of mechanic that prevents survivors from doing this repeatedly. Sabotaging could have a longer cooldown. For instance, saving a teammate with a pallet maybe would have some kind of condition that doesn't let it happen more than once. And things like this. And perks like background player, duty of care, they need to be balanced very, 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 very carefully. Ideally, this goes without saying, S tier killers deserve more nerfs. They deserve more nerfs, and I'm sorry to say this. They also could be made a little bit easier to play, to compensate, but they do need some nerfs, and ideally, low tier killers also, you know, need a bit more help. But I hope that these points help you understand a little.
Wow, that was an amazing video. I'm really glad that I was able to hopefully explain some points, and it's great to see that we have probably one of the biggest names in this community is able to at least bring some awareness to this, because ultimately there's only so much I can do to try to bring something to this, you know what I mean? Try to bring some awareness to these glaring issues. And it's good to know that I'm not crazy for seeing these points, for understanding these points, for seeing all this stuff like on my own, and understanding that is the truth, right? Like, this is what the problems are in the game, and there's so much to discuss, you know, when it comes down to stuff like this. And I gotta say, if you made it this far into the video, man, leave a like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube things for me, man. I would say watch the original video, linked in the description for the odds video, and support odds, man. Watch his content. He has got very informative stuff, very entertaining content. Support me with the links in the description. You can also follow on Twitch so you can watch me play Killer live, and yeah, check out one of the other videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.